To kick off, I think it's really important that we do an introduction to BSI, who we are, what standards are, and the role that they play. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Deirdre to do that introduction. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. Hello, everyone. So my name is Deirdre Faree. I am a lead standards development manager at BSI. What I do is I work at BSI within the built environment team, and I manage BSI committees and work with a range of experts and stakeholders that input into the development and maintenance of standards. As Sarah said, I'm going to talk a little bit more about who BSI is, what we do, and why standards are important. Um, having you join today, I would imagine some of you might have heard a bit about BSI. When people ask me what do I do and I say I work for BSI, the reaction is usually one of two ways. Either they've never ever heard of us, or the usual thing is, oh, the kite mark. And you'll probably find that stamped on a lot of products just that shows that they've been independently tested and they meet the British standards. So that is true. The kite mark is part of what we do, but we do a lot more than that, and that's not the complete picture. So I'm just going to go into a little bit more detail and take a moment to talk about what we do and why it actually matters. So, Sarah, if you want to go to the next slide, thank you. So, who is BSI? So, the acronym is British Standards Institution, in case you've not heard of us. And we are the UK's national standards body. We're probably, the first and I believe the oldest national standards body to be set up anywhere in the world. We were first awarded a royal charter in 1929, so that means everything we do is in national interest. We've been around for quite a long time. We were founded in 1901. So actually this year is quite a significant milestone year for us because we celebrate our 125th year in service. Um, as the national standards body, what we do is we aid innovation, we support economic growth, improve quality, safety, and well-being, all via our standards. So, as I mentioned, I work for the national standards body and I work specifically in the team that develops standards. However, there's lots of different things that BSI does. This includes certification and assurance, and that's making sure, checking that the standards are being met. And this is where the kite mark would probably come into play. But we also do training and help organizations apply those standards to add value to what they do. As a group, overall, we have a global presence in over 90 countries and have offices worldwide. And our headquarters is in central London in Covent Garden. So, what is our role? It's all about making a positive impact, and we do this via standards. We also represent the UK's interest at a European and global level. So we do this through our UK committees, and part of what I do is facilitate the expert participation at that level, which makes sure that the UK interests are represented. In terms of stats, we've published over 40,000 standards, and annually, just over 3,000 standards are published annually by working with those stakeholders who sit on our committees and develop the standards. So I'm just going to move on now into talking about what the standards are, how they benefit us, and why they're important. So if you can move to the next slide. Thank you, Sarah. So if you wondered what a standard is, it's basically a guideline for how we do things better. And overall, it helps improve the quality and the safety of products, services, and systems. So essentially, those things are deemed safe, reliable, trusted, and consistent. The standards are also sometimes used by regulators and they can be referenced in those regulations, and it acts as a tool to demonstrate compliance. So you can see on the slides, there's several things that the standards do. They help people, and when I say help people, we don't just develop them like for a specialist sort of area. They are part of everyday life and everything we do. So without realizing and without thinking, a lot of what you use every day, for example, your mobile phones, the toys your children play with, they all most likely have been made in accordance with standards. It even goes to more complex topics like topics that I specifically manage, which is Eurocodes. And they're basically like a common rule book to ensure that structures like buildings and bridges are designed safely, for example. So overall, they help people just on those everyday things that you don't think about, and it's banking, energy, healthcare. I mean, an example I'd like to give is, for example, we all have bank cards. and they fit in your wallet and they all a standard size and they fit in the ATMs and all that happens because the standard has made it possible. So, in terms of just helping organizations, it also creates that trust from consumers. So, organizations are able to deliver higher quality products. Standards enables them to manage the risks more effectively. And just in general, they are used to sort of a way to act more responsibly towards their environment, which in turn, all those things in turn help innovation move faster. We also have the standards element of because they benefit consumers and organizations, in turn, they are a vital part of supporting economic growth. And just as a stat, to put it out there, I believe there was an independent study, and in a typical year, standards contribute over 8 billion pounds to the UK economy. So that's quite a big number, and you can see the impact that it makes there. And then I talked a bit about sustainability. So they do support sustainability, and it's all about equipping organizations and businesses with the knowledge to be able to improve quality, safety, and sustainability. So overall, I hope that's given you like a brief or at least a snippet of the importance of standards and how BSI's role is encouraging their use and helping facilitate that development. So if it's okay, Sarah, I'll pass over to you so you could talk a little bit about the initiative that we're doing with the BSI Young Professionals Network.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Deirdre. So I'll move on to our next slide. So I'll talk very briefly about what we're doing at BSI to engage young professionals in standards and support career growth. So there should have been a poll at the start of this webinar, which hopefully you filled in. And basically, we wanted to know, have you heard of BSI before? Have you heard of standards? Because the reality is, and it's very common, and particularly amongst a younger demographic, is there is a lack of awareness of standards. There's a lack of awareness of the importance of standards, the role of BSI and our national standards body role in the UK. And that's even in fields that you know standards are prevalent. So, for example, sustainability, AI, many areas, societal impact areas where standards exist and are key and crucial to that area. You know, young people working in that field are not aware of it, and sometimes it's a case of maybe I've heard of an ISO standard, for example, or a BS standard. You would have heard of it or maybe seen the kite mark, but the awareness isn't there. And to make sure standards continue to do good, to continue to protect people now and in the future, it's so important that we bring younger voices in. So a lot of what I do at BSI as BSI's Young Professionals Engagement Manager is around that awareness raising piece. But also, young people are not aware of the career benefits of getting involved in standards. So it's an opportunity to have your voice heard. You can help shape change in areas that are meaningful to you and that will affect you in the future. Um, it's an opportunity to develop your professional development skills. A lot of the skills are transferable to your day-to-day roles, whether you're helping to develop standards, whether you're using standards in your organization. These are all ways that you can really showcase to your organization and your employers what you're doing, in addition to your role, to have impact and to develop your skills and to progress in your career. So you'll see on screen some of our initiatives. So we have the BSI Young Professionals Exchange, which is our in-person, face-to-face event, all about bringing youth voices into standards. It's been designed by, with, and for young professionals, and we've brought in many members of the BYP network to that. We had BYP Network sponsor our event in 2024, so it's been great to have them as a partner for the past few years in our engagement work. We also have a young professionals network. So that network has grew in size tremendously. So in 2025, we saw it double in size to just under 370 members. That's young professionals. And when I say young professionals, it's age 18 to 35 across all sectors who are either already involved in standards, maybe on committees developing standards and shaping standards. They might use standards in their organization, or they're keen to learn more and find out more about how they can get involved and how they can develop their career and maybe find new pathways, new career pathways through standards. So you'll see a QR code on screen now. I encourage you to scan the QR code and sign up to the network if you are interested. We have a quarterly newsletter as well that goes out, and there's no commitment required. It's very much a case of if you would like to get involved, you're passionate about shaping change, and you would like to get more involved in standards, then this is your way to go. So hopefully we can welcome many of you to the network. Um, in terms of the panel discussion for today, because I'm keen to move on to that now, and bringing out other speakers, this panel discussion will focus all around standards and career growth. So our speakers today will talk a little bit about how standards has helped to shape their own career. So I'm going to stop sharing now and I'm going to introduce our other panelists. So I'd like to introduce alongside myself and Deirdre into the panel discussion, Yusuf Shoyoye, Standards Engineer at SKA Observatory, and Bamidele Farinre, a multi-award winning Chartered Biomedical Scientist, STEM leader, global mentor, and author. So, welcome to all the speakers. Really excited to have this discussion today, and hopefully, we can inspire some attendees on the call to maybe think a little bit differently about how they can get involved in standards and how it could help shape their career, and some of the pathways that they may not be aware of. So, first of all, obviously, Deirdre, you've introduced yourself. So we'll move over to Yusuf first. Yusuf, can you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about your career history today and maybe a bit about how you first got involved in standards? Because I think that's a really interesting story.
Yeah, thanks for me and thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, my name is Yusuf. As you rightly said, I'm an accidental standards engineer. Came into standards by accident. Long story short, I had my first degree in electrical engineering. Did my master's in telecoms engineering. Afterwards, I got a job in an automotive industry as a testing and standards engineer. I had no clue, no idea what that was, what that would entail. I knew the testing bit, but I wasn't sure about the standard bit. Like many people, standards wasn't something that people are familiar with in university until when they are done with university. And then you get turn into the job market and then get a job and then you need to start learning on the job. So I got into standard by accident. And part of my job was to test to certain standards. I had to learn, study those standards, use them. Um, with time, I was also lucky enough to get involved in writing standards. Um, that was my previous job. My current job was, well, I got this current job after a couple of years, about 7 years working in the automotive industry. And now I work as a standards engineer for a project that's going to be the largest telescope in the world when it's completely built. We've got sites in South Africa and Australia, but the HQ is based in the UK. And then my job is to ensure that the products that are assembled to form this largest telescope in the world are built to certain standards, mostly international standards, Australian standard and South African standards too. Um, yeah, so that's what I do in a nutshell. I'm a BSI trained and certified lead auditor for quality management system and occupational health and safety. So audit also as part of my job. I do a bit of conformity assessment, also assess conformity of products to certain standards and regulations. And I'm also a 2025 IC Young Professional. I got nominated last year by BSI and its partner. And I was one of 3 UK representatives at the IC General Meeting in India, New Delhi, last September. So yeah, that's just a little bit about myself. I can go on and on, but let me just talk less at this moment. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Yusuf. And yeah, we met a few years back, didn't we, at first at the BSI Standards Conference. And, I remember you was really keen to find out more about the committee work, how you could get involved, and take that next step, from being curious and aware of standards in your organization, but then actually, how can I implement change? How can I shape the future in the area that I work in? So, it was great to get you involved from that. And then we had you part of the Young Professionals Network at BSI. And as you mentioned, the IEC Young Professionals Program, which for those of you on the call, it's the International Electrotechnical Commission that BSI feeds into in the standards world. So it's you've had influence and impact on a global scale now. So it's been great to see your journey develop, and I know you're really keen to inspire and advocate for standards amongst young professionals. So thank you. We'll come back to your career journey a little bit more. Bami, would you like to introduce yourself and the same, talk a little bit about your career to date and how you first got involved in standards?
Thank you very much, Sarah. I'm happy to be here today. My name is Bamidele Farinre, and I wouldn't go into the previous introduction of being a chartered biomedical scientist. So I had a little bit about how my career started. I studied biomedical science degree and went on to work initially as a medical laboratory assistant before then training as a biomedical scientist. And I've worked with various organizations within the NHS, the UK government, and also private organizations as a chartered biomedical scientist. Um, about the I think like 5 years now, I've been working in technology space as an agile practitioner and a Scrum Master mentor. And outside of my professional roles, I'm a published author of the book The Mentor's Journey from Learning to Leading. I'm a STEM advocate. I'm an educator, a global mentor. Additionally, my work with standards, I would say all throughout my career, I've actually worked with standards. Working in the laboratory, working in the technology space is heavily regulated. And by heavily regulated, we mean everything is governed by policies, by standards. We have to work to a particular regulations within the healthcare industries. So me coming into standards, even though I didn't really understand the importance and what they play, the role that they play, with over time, especially moving into the leadership roles that I started doing, I noticed that everything we do is regulated by it. Every step that we take, every process that is done in the lab is standards regulated. And the reason is because it's for conformity, it's for credibility as well. Outside of that, I actually sit on the board of my professional body, which is the Institute of Biomedical Science, as an advisory vice chair for the Virology Advisory Panel Group. I'm also a BSI committee member for the laboratory furniture. And then you get to hear more about that, the reason why that is really important to the work that we do. And also on the regulatory side, I'm an HCPC, which is the Healthcare Protection Council partner for registration, and this is so that when we admit people to the biomedical science register, we ensure that they have the right qualifications and the right expertise experience for them to be admitted onto the register.
Thank you, Bami. And it's just great to hear, again, similar to yours, of how you've kind of developed through your career and how standards has come along that way. And it's kind of they've been building blocks for different steps in what you're doing. And like you said, it's everything we do, standards is involved, in some way, shape, or form, often hidden, but very crucial and very important. So yeah, really interesting to hear about that. Um, I think it'd be good to ask you, let's stick with you for now, Bami. You spoke a bit about kind of being an advocate within the STEM space, and you're passionate about bringing more diverse voices into STEM. From a personal perspective, did you face any challenges along the way as a Black woman in the field? And I guess what more do you think could be done to inspire more diverse voices in STEM and to maybe think about pursuing a career in that field?
Thank you. So that question is very dear to my heart, actually, because As a Black woman in STEM, the challenges I can't even begin to tell you, and they're real. And these are my lived experiences. I could say that my journey into STEM started with a failure. And the failure was that when I initially wanted to study pharmacy, but then I didn't get the grades that I needed. So I failed the first year of A levels, all the science subject, I failed it. And I remember then the lecturer, so that was where my challenge started. The lecturer said to me, a woman as well, looked in my face and said, Bami, you don't have the head for science. You need to think about your career options right there and there. And then at that point, my world was like, I want to study pharmacy. What am I going to do? That was my first challenge. But that didn't stop me. I re-enrolled. Of course, I was disappointed. I was gutted. I was like, maybe this is over. I'm not going to be in science anymore, especially hearing that for somebody that is in a place of authority. So I enrolled and then I started again. I think just like Yusuf as well, me being in biomedical science is a little bit of a default because I had to go through clearing HND and all that for me to then study biomedical science. And then here I am today. Why did I tell you that story? That already was a systemic challenge for me. I've not even entered into the industry and I'm hearing that. If I'd listened to that voice, I probably would not be where I am today. I had a support system in my friend then who said, Bami, no, this is not the end of you. You can start again. And I found even entering the industry, it continues. The challenges of, being overlooked for promotion, having to prove yourself over and over again, these are real. Systemic bias, discrimination, they are real. In as much as you choose your words and the way you describe them, but they actually affect us. But one thing I did, I remember early on in my career, I didn't have a mentor. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that there weren't mentors around. Usually, what we're trained for is to do the work. You're not trained to do any other thing because we have a service to provide. So I decided, even though I didn't know what it was going to entail, to be a mentor. I didn't know it all. Did I have all the answers? No, but I decided to be a mentor to others. And I'm thinking to myself, the challenges that I went through, I don't want other people to actually go through it. And if they are to go through it, they have a blueprint. And ends the beginning of my advocacy, especially for women in STEM, because there's so many things that actually blocks them outside of them being female. There are other, like, there's cultural biases. There's so many things that could actually, stop you and be like a barrier. And that was why I actually founded No Ceiling. No ceiling means that the ceiling exists, but we have a way of removing them. Ceilings are barriers. So I started that movement as a way of saying, okay, we're tired of breaking ceilings. What can we do to ensure that ceilings don't exist in the first place? And so, but the way I've navigated it is through like resilience, through finding people that truly believe in you, that you can speak to, because they are out there, but you just have to find the right support system. Access as well is another challenge. Some people, they have resources, but they don't have access to the resource. I'm sure this is speaking to many professionals out there, whether you're just upcoming professionals, seasoned professionals, or even graduates. You may have the resources, but you don't know how to access. So that's another issue. So this is where, when we speak about allyship, when we speak about sponsorship and mentorship, this is where they come to play. I found these are the things that have helped me. And also to navigate all these challenges is for me thinking, I'm not going to give up. I'm not gonna give up. Consistently opening the doors for yourself. When one door closes, you go and knock on it. Oh, what brought me to where I am today is going for challenges. I mean, is going after, when I say challenges, it's like opening doors for myself, creating spaces for myself. Sometimes it can be difficult. All I always say to myself, worst case scenario, you will get a no.
Yeah.
It's not the end of it. You go again. Yeah.
Thank you, Bami. And I think having you as an individual that's advocating in STEM and showing younger generations that actually you can get involved. We had at a BSI conference in 2024. I don't know if any of you would know of her, but her name is Dame Maddie Adirian Pocock, and she's a space scientist, and she's a TV broadcaster, very high profile. And she come and spoke at the our BSI Young Professionals Exchange in 2024 and spoke very similarly about her experience through STEM and how, she kind of said she was in a room where, she didn't feel that she was being heard. People, were kind of overseeing the work that she was doing, and she wasn't being listened to. And she really, spoke about how it's important to sort of keep pushing through, like you said, but also to have that. Bami, I found it quite interesting what you said about the mentorship piece. And as a mentor, you might not know everything, but if you're there and you're acting as an individual that can show younger people, I'm here, I did it, you can do this as well. I think that's really important. And I'm sure that around navigating your career earlier on will resonate with a lot of people on the call. Yusuf, I want to come back to you again. You spoke a little bit just now about the your experience on the IEC Young Professionals Program. So, just as a bit of context for people on the call, the IEC Young Professionals Program is a global program that every year it's a general meeting held somewhere different across the globe, a general global standards meeting by the International Electrotechnical Commission. So it's everyone involved in standards in the electrotechnical space. Different stakeholders from different standards bodies across the globe come together to talk annually. And as part of that, there is a young professionals workshop that each standards body across the globe will nominate young professionals to take part in that. And Yusuf, as you said, you was one of the 2025 BSI Young Professional cohorts for that workshop. And I got the opportunity in 2024 to see that and observe that workshop when we held it in Edinburgh. BSI was the host of that meeting, and I was astounded by the opportunities that and the doors that could be opened for young professionals through that workshop. So it'd be really good to hear a little bit more about your experience, and some of the skills that you learn, and maybe how that has already impacted your career, or how you see that impacting your career going forward. And maybe has it got you thinking about what you want to do differently, or has it brought maybe a newfound confidence to the work back in your organization? Be great to hear.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I don't know where to begin from in terms of talking about the IC Young Professional Program. I mean, I'm still a YP because it's a year-long program, and it was interesting to join about 90 odd fellow young professionals from about 40 plus countries around the world. If nothing at all, one of the biggest takeaway from that experience was the expanding that I gained. I gained a lot. I made lots of new friends, lots of new professional, colleagues. I mean, I used to make fun of. I mean, I used to joke with some of them that if I happen to be in their country anytime soon, they'll be the first people that I'm going to call on. So I believe I've got friends now in almost uh, half of the countries of the world, or if not more. So it was packed full of activities. It was a week-long program in New Delhi, in India, last September, and the week flew by because we're literally involved in activities from boot camps to workshops to joining the general meeting itself, which was like you being in the General Assembly. It was very, very interesting. We also had some site visits, so we had to choose between going to a private electronics factory or going to one of India's actually the India's solar research facility. And yeah, I can't begin to tell you about what the experiences were like. As part of the program, we had to be given breakout groups. We had breakout groups with breakout projects that you had to produce at the end of the what week-long program. And in the midst of all the activities around, the breakout group that was opportune to be in managed to produce a short video that demystified what confidence assessment is. So we had 5 breakout groups, and the YPs had to vote for the top 3 projects that would be showcased on the final day of the assembly. Our group's project was one of those 3 projects. And in fact, it's made its way to the IEC website, on the ICE website. So in terms of my biggest takeaway was having to come up with that project in a short space of time. We had very little time. We only had an hour every day or two to work on the project because you had other things that we had to get involved in. And then after the whole thing, it has resulted in some, I've, I've been, that is that that's directly or indirectly, resulted in me getting a promotion at work because of the efforts for output of the IC and YP program. And I also know a few of my colleagues from the YP program that have managed to get to switch jobs because of the experiences at the IC Young Professional Program. So in terms of the career goal, in terms of the takeaway, not just for me, but fellow YPs, it's just you can't put a measure on it. It's yeah, it's a very was a very valuable experience, and one that I would encourage anyone to explore, getting involved in. Yeah.
Thanks, Yusuf. And I think you're right. It's really hard to summarize in a couple of minutes what that experience was. As I said, when I observed it in 2024, I could see this group of young professionals from across the globe coming together. And like you said, a lot of them by the end of the week were, really good friends. They'd connected in ways that you would never do in your day-to-day role. Um, the opportunity to travel. You got to go to New Delhi and see a completely different country. So it's all those different opportunities that being part of Standards has opened up for you. Coming to the Standards conference a few years ago, being curious to now, being an IEC young professional. It's incredible, and I think some of those benefits of getting involved are amazing, and can be taken outside of standards. The transferable skills that you learn, the fact that you were in a room, young professionals were presenting to the general meeting with hundreds of stakeholders across the globe, with different experience levels, and young professionals had a platform to have their voice heard and were able to really shape change on a global level. So yeah, I'm a strong advocate for that program and the benefits, and it was great that you were able to be part of that. And as you said, it's a continued program. You're still involved and you're still advocating for that and working as part of our young professionals work. Deirdre, I'd like to come back to you again. I know you spoke a bit earlier about your role at BSI, but it'd be really good to hear a little bit more about the work you do managing committees. I think sometimes there's not just a lack of understanding, but maybe a misconception about who develops standards. So it'd be really good to hear, a little bit about the different types of individuals that develop those standards, and maybe if there's any sort of myths that you've heard about standards that you'd be able to debunk or kind of share a little bit of insight into.
Thanks, Sarah. So I think when people hear about standards, they probably imagine that it's maybe just a small or lone group or neutral group of experts, or maybe it's governments that's decided everything behind the scenes. But in reality, it actually works quite differently. So standards are all about bringing a lot of different voices together. So this is where the diversity and inclusion comes into play. But we make sure that there's all the necessary voices involved in any particular topic that we are creating a standard for. So it might include industry experts, regulators, government representatives, trade bodies, and even consumers. I think we've also got a consumer public interest network or partnership with them rather that ensures that they can also get involved and have a voice in certain standards that are being developed. And I think the key thing, and we've heard from Yusuf and Bami, the extensive experience they've got and everything that they do. And being a standards maker or involved in committees is basically them doing that voluntarily on top of their day-to-day job. So you can just appreciate just the focus and the impact that they're making, and considering that this is all on top of what they normally do. it's really appreciated from sort of a BSI side of things, because obviously I work and manage the experts. But just in general, in terms of actually coming to the standard, there's a lot of discussion involved. So it's not just, a small group saying, okay, or the government saying, yeah, that's what you should do, and that's it, and we publish a standard. There's lots of discussions involved. We sometimes go back and forth. We have instances where people don't always agree, and sometimes you'll find that the debate will be over the smallest of details, and you'll struggle to get further until you get past that detail. But that's actually where the strength is in of the process. And so it all boils down to standards being agreed by consensus. So, because they agreed by consensus, and because we try and make sure we get all the relevant and the right people in the room so that all voices are representatives, in the end, the standards represent a balanced view of basically real life experiences. So because they're shaped by real people. I hope that gives you a little bit about what it is all about.
Thanks, Deirdre. And I think you're right. It's about making sure that the relevant people are in the room so that standards can continue to, protect people and deliver for the end user that it's intended for. And I think just touching on young people getting involved and kind of sometimes the perception of, you have to have years and years of experience. I think there's definitely situations where that is required. That technical experience is necessary, but I think it's also about how relevant your experience is. So if you've been in a role for 6 months, but it's a role that's relevant to the development of that standard, and there's information that you're working on that is crucial to making sure that it's in that standard, then that is relevant experience still. So it's just kind of looking at, what that means, I guess, the in terms of relevant experience. And I think as well, what you mentioned about kind of working with different stakeholders, and you've got, different voices and different perspectives across the globe, and you're having to navigate that and have your voice heard. And it really does sort of give you an opportunity to develop your skills, your communication skills, consensus building, even I guess negotiating, if you're trying to get your point across and you've got people that are having different opinions, it's a space to develop those skills and then take that back into your day-to-day role. And also I think, with the chair role on committees, there are some young professionals that are in those chair roles and are able to kind of steer the group and lead that conversation, or some young professionals will work to move into that role and be mentored by an existing chair. So there's lots of opportunities there to kind of develop those skills. So yeah, thank you for that. Bami, I'm going to come back to you for a minute, conscious of time as well. So we will try to kind of wrap up a little bit quicker so we can allow time for questions as well. Really conscious to make sure we've got time for audience questions. But sticking a little bit on the kind of skills development side of standards, Bami, so I think for many individuals, standards is overlooked as a standards pathway, either through lack of awareness or again the assumption that, it's not relevant to them, or they don't have the experience to get involved. And often there's challenges, like Deirdre said, around, time commitment. It is a professional volunteering role, getting involved in standards and sitting on the committee. So there's often challenges, around balancing that with your day-to-day role, and that can bring challenges with your employer. So I guess what I'm asking is, how did you kind of come to see standards as an opportunity for long-term career growth and something that was worth staying involved in from that perspective?
Thank you, Sarah. For me, my involvement started with, I'm going to make a statement. I found that a lot of the decisions that are being made when standards and policies are being written does not involve the people that are at the very receiving end of it. Those that actually use the standards. So I found that it's really important to have a voice. And how do I do that? So I started with my professional body, which is the Institute of Biomedical Science, as a advisory board member. And the reason for that is because the professional body is responsible for the training and development of the biomedical science workforce. And I'm thinking, okay, so if they're training us based on experience of what they feel, things are changing. We are in the workplace now. What is it that is affecting us that it could potentially put into the training, manual portfolios, so that it's reflective of what is actually happening real time? So that voice permits me to be able to say, oh, okay, this is what you think. No, this is not how it is in the lab. I'll take, for example, my membership with as a committee member with the BSI laboratory furniture. So when they're manufacturing, we're able to say, oh, well, that's not actually works. We work with them to let them know that this is how it actually is. And when you think about standards, they're not just static, documentation. They actually informs us of our safety, quality, and innovation really in practice. So the way I see it, I stay in it because I want to be able to make a difference, knowing fully well that I'm the one that's engaged in active practice. So we are able to inform the others, all the other stakeholders, to say, well, this is not how it is. And the thing I feel like working early on standards also, it broadens like my visibility, my understanding of best practices, and also like interdisciplinary working, collaboration with other groups outside of my immediate you know uh space, like within the biomedical science or even in the technology space as well. So I found that it's just one of the most rewarding career defining aspects of my career journey to date. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and completely agree on what you said around, you know, who is in the room when standards are being developed. Are the relevant individuals involved? An example is some medical devices have been known to not detect darker skin tones, and that can have then obviously drastic consequences for the end user. Risk of life in that example, and it then goes back to the question of, well, okay, who was in the room when that was being tested and those conversations were taking place? So yeah, it's completely true and very important. I'm really conscious of time, so I think what I'm going to do, we do have a few more questions for our speakers, but I think it would be good to maybe open up the audience questions, and then depending on the questions we have, I think we can run over a little bit past 7 if people are able to stay on. I know it's the evening, so we don't want to take up too much of everyone's evening. But yeah, I think if we go to audience questions, and then depending on what there are, I could maybe come back to some of the speaker questions if we've got time. Um, yeah, so I think BYP Bum is going to pass through some of those questions. Let's have a little look.
I've put them to your.
Yes, I can see them. Okay, so question one. So this is a question for you, Bami. So the question is, how did you stay motivated despite the setbacks you faced? And also, how do we get sponsors? Someone's mentioned that they've heard this quite a lot in their organization around the importance of sponsors, but maybe the advice hasn't always been there. So could you share anything?
Um, I think it's when I see other people win, and I'll tell you what that means. So sometimes I'm like, what's the point? Because it's like you're backing at the wrong tree, when you're thinking like you're not being heard. But what I found is when I mentor someone and I can see the difference. It might not be it might not take them fully to where they want to be, but it's a starting point. They can see light. Do you understand? They have hope that, do you know what? I can actually do this. I can navigate this. I have a lot of, graduate, early career individuals that will come to me for advice, and I will tell them ABC. Like I said, I don't have all the answers. Sometimes I signpost them. And when you speak about sponsorship, sponsors are the people that mention your name in rooms that you're not able to enter. How does that work? Start with finding a mentor, because your mentor could potentially be your sponsor. Your mentor could be your ally. Who is allies? Allies are people that actually they believe in you, they advocate for you. But the sponsor is the one that makes it happen. They've got the influence. but they all is all interconnected. So you in as even in your organization, you can definitely find somebody that you'd be like, you know what, potentially I want you to mentor me. You see values in them. You just don't find any mentor. You see people that possibly have walked the journey that you're trying to work. Bearing in mind, a mentor provides like a blueprint. Is for you to now work your journey. So yeah, so sponsors are really key, because when we think about mentorship, we can only take you so far. But when it comes to sponsorship and allyship, they say your when they see like, okay, they know your skills, they know your experience, they be like, you be the right person for this. They mention your name. So that's the way it works.
Yeah, and I think something I heard as well around that and mentorship, and it's true what you said about the connection between sponsors and mentorship mentors. And if there's someone in a senior position in your organization that either supports the work you do, or has commented in the past around the work that you're doing, and that they're a support of that, how can you sort of further that conversation with them to see where they can influence in different rooms that you're not in. And I think like that's what you said around, then it leads to that sponsorship and those that actually have the influence to make those things, so they're kind of interconnected in a way. We've got another question, and I'm gonna direct this to Yusuf. So, Yusuf, someone has asked, were there moments when standards actually made your work easier, not harder? Um, yeah.
Um, yeah, eh, many times. So I see standards as minimum requirements. Like they are not up here. Like someone like I had someone say years ago, and he just talked to me and like this is actually true. So they are building blocks, they're the minimum requirements, and one should be aiming to even go higher than the standards. So I've had incidences in my work where I've had issues. I mean, that's my work to implement standards, and people will come with problems, or I will hear people saying we have this issue with something. Like the standard for this problem, you just need to look for it. So recently, I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna spill the bean because it's like work. So it's quite confidential. But recently, if a colleague of mine came to me because we had some issues with one of our contractors. The quality of what they were giving us was not, was not up to par. And it was like, what can we do about this? Like, what is the problem? So we sat down, we figured out the root cause of the problem, and we identified the standards that we then recommended to the contractor to explore in order to fix this root problem. And it saved us a whole lot of having to involve consultants, so it's there. There are so many standards. You just need to find the right one for your problem. And yeah, it's time saving. And I mean, they are made by experts. Standards are written by experts. They are written by people from diverse fields. So why go to the effort of trying to invent the wheel when you've already had the work done for you? You just need to find the right standard and apply it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think what you're saying as well is having that knowledge of standards has unlocked opportunities for you to have influence, which in turn has made things easier, not just for you and your role, but actually for your organization. So, you're able to influence and shape things at different levels because you have that knowledge of standards and that understanding of their impact. You can then not only you have that knowledge, you can then advocate and use that within your organization. So you're playing a really key role in your organization because of that understanding of standards. Um, Someone else has asked for you, Yusuf, did you ever face pushbacks when trying to implement standards at your workplace, and how did you handle that?
Yeah, yeah. Pushbacks are an everyday thing for me. Um, the same way people don't understand, many people don't know what standards are. People, when you mention standards to people that don't know about it, that have not been properly told about what they are, they see it as some yeah, something that is difficult or something that, I mean, is out of the box. Like, no. So one of the challenges that I had when I started my job was I spent the bulk of my first year with making presentations to project managers, to design authorities, because I needed to make them aware that this would help, would not hinder. It's going to save us time, save us cost, help us to maintain a certain level of quality and safety without reinventing the wheel. So even after all of that, I still get a few people that still, it's normal. I mean, but it's part of life. But definitely pushbacks are an everyday thing. And if you don't get pushbacks, then you probably won't value how much of how much how important standards are, because by actually educating people, it makes you also appreciate more the value of standards. So yeah, so I had pushbacks, and then I had to just soldier on and basically sit people down and inform them about what standard really are and make them see the value in it. And yeah, so far so good.
And I
I'm
guess
still here.
you've turned that negative around, the pushbacks with standards into a positive because you've seen it as an opportunity to educate others in your organization about standards. And I think you're right. There is a perception initially of this massive document to look at, or but once you do the hard work at the start and have that knowledge and then think about how that can then be used to support the business for their organization and priorities, then you can start to have that influence and go, okay, now I know what I need to know, and I can implement that. So yeah, that's really interesting, Yusuf. Thank you. Really conscious of time. There is another question, but it kind of nicely ties in with the wrap up now. So um, so the question was around, are there any communities or networks or programs where I can learn more and connect over standards? So I did have a slide, but I don't know if I'm able to share it still. I don't know for me if you're able to. But it's basically, oh no, I can do that now. Sorry. Let me just share that. Okay, hopefully you can see this now. So in terms of getting involved, um, and the different ways that you can do that, you should be able to see on screen a couple of QR codes now. So what I would encourage you to do is you can scan the QR code. Oh, let me just try and enlarge this. That's it. Okay, so you've got the QR code for our careers site. So um, whilst we've spoke a lot about getting involved in developing standards, BSI has paid for roles within the organisation. So if you scan that QR code, you can browse all the available careers at BSI, and they cover a variety of roles from Deirdre's role in standards development, leading on managing the committees, to auditing, assurance, lots of different roles. So I would really encourage you to have a look at that. You can also scan the QR code around getting involved in standards development, and that's a little bit more around, okay, how do I identify a committee that I might want to get involved in? There's other ways you can get involved. You can comment when standards go to a public comment. Individuals are allowed to look at the standard, look at the proposal, and suggest their comments. So that's another way of getting involved. But that QR code will take you to that page. And then if you'd like to join the Young Professionals Network that I spoke a little bit about earlier, and if you scan that QR code at the bottom, that will take you straight to the Microsoft form that you can fill in. It literally takes less than a minute to fill that in, and then you'll be signed up to the network and you'll hear about all the YP engagement opportunities that we've got this year. And then if you want to ask me anything directly, I'm more than happy for you to contact me on my email address, which is on the screen as well. I think we'll be able to share these slides after as well. So if you haven't managed to capture any of this, we'll send that as well after. If you've got any more questions or any questions for the speakers, they'll be more than happy to look at those. So hopefully that answers the question around kind of getting involved and the different resources that are available to you. Really conscious of time, so I'm going to wrap up now. Just wanted to say thank you to all the speakers for that discussion and to all of the attendees. In terms of what we're doing at BSI, we are really committed to bringing diverse voices into standards, particularly through young voices. And part of our partnership, our partnership with the BYP network and this webinar and the wider work we're doing, we're really trying to make that change. We're not where we want to be, and we're very open and honest about that, but we are really, really trying to change that. And through this work that we're doing, hopefully we can do that and move in the right direction. There are also job roles through standards that you may have not thought of in other organisations. So you've got BSI careers internally. There's also other standards bodies and organisations that there are similar job roles, but also there's job roles in a huge variety of organisations that involve standards. So I would encourage you to just be curious and kind of be open to those kind of roles. That could be compliance, regulation, governance, risk, quality, sustainability, digital, particularly AI and governance, supply chain management, another example, quality management. So there's so many different roles that standards cover. And yeah, I would just, if you're curious to learn more, please do use those resources to contact us. But as I said, they should be shared afterwards. So please do reach out if you'd like to get involved in any way that we've spoke about today, and we can help you through your journey. And maybe one day some of you on the call might be speaking on a panel with like our speakers have today to kind of share maybe how your standards journey's gone. So thank you, everyone. That's been, really interesting. And hopefully you feel a bit more inspired and have a few more ideas around how maybe you can shape your career and have some things to take away to implement today. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Bamidele, Yusuf, Deidre, Sarah. It has been an amazing session. Unfortunately, we have to end now, but it was an amazing session. Enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
Right, thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye.